All right, good evening. We'll get started with our annual budget hearing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I turn it over to Business Manager Lundberg, just want to publicly thank Mr. Lundberg as well as the entirety of his office for the work done on the 25-26 or FY16 annual budget. Approximately $72 million budget with 70 some odd million in expenditures, but it's months and months and months in the making. I know the process begins back November, December. And anyway, great work done by Mr. Lundberg and his respective team. Certainly want to give hats off to them. Let him get into the details.
Okay, here we go for the 36th time in my career, I think. Wow. Anyhow, Who's counting? Yeah, me. I think what we were presenting to you tonight for 25-26 budget is a very responsible budget that meets all the needs and it provides a robust education experience for all of our Brandon Valley students. It does all that. The budget maintains and improves our continued leadership in statewide salary policy with a 2.5% plus increase in salaries, plus bennies. And I think also it provides financial stability for the years to come. Our fund balance management continues to be a big part of our budgetary process, and we're utilizing the fund balance to give the patrons of the Brandon Valley School District the best use of their tax dollars. I think we do a very, very good job of that. The servicing, issuance, and management of our district debt, I believe, is second to none. Our bond rating is AA+. I think that's replicated in our budget being AA+. We will be completing another elementary school and an addition on our middle school at the end of next year, 25-26, I guess it's this year, within the confines of our current mill levies. So with that, just a summary, I'll get into the detail of everything. On page 2 are the appropriations that we have budgeted for 25-26. General fund, $42,948,000, an increase of $2 million over last year. The capital outlay fund is $8,910,000, which is an increase of $3.3 million over last year. It's a great big percentage increase, 60%. We had low expenditures last year in the capital outlay fund. Special ed fund is $11,152,000, increase of $175,000 over last year, 2%. Bond redemption fund is up $100,000, 3.4 million. And food service is up $84,000 at $4,113,000 of expenses. The next page, page 3, shows the revenues. About 3 lines up from the bottom. The total revenues in the general fund are $42,877,000, which is up $1.9 million from last year. Capital outlay fund is up $640,000 to $10,265,000. Special ed is up $830,000 at $11,307,000 total revenues. Bond redemption fund is up $100,000, $3.4 million, and food service up $288,000 at $4,018,000. Leaves a small deficit in the general fund of $71,000, $1,355,000 surplus in the bond or in the capital outlay fund, $155,000 surplus in the special ed fund, break even in the bond redemption fund, and a $95,000 deficit in the food service fund. At the bottom of that page, you'll see our estimated fund balances at the end of 24-25 school year and a projected estimated fund balance at the end of 6/30/26, the end of this year. $8.9 million in the general fund, $6,147,000 in the capital outlay fund, $865,000 in the special education fund, $1.4 million in the bond redemption fund, and $1,673,000 in the food service fund. The next is a slide on our revenues for all the funds. $71,907,000 of total revenue for all funds. Of that total of $72 million, 53% comes from local sources, 41% from state sources, 4% from federal sources, and just a small amount, 1.9% from the operating transfer. That 4% from federal sources will become evident that it's a good thing. with what's going on right now with the freezing of federal funds, we just don't rely a lot on federal funds. Never have. Expenditures, a total of all funds, $70,563,000. The general fund comprises 61% of that total. Special education fund is 15.8% of that total. Capital outlay fund is 12.6%. Bond redemption is just under 5%. And food service just over 5%, 5.8%. The next slide is a slide of the total salaries in the district. 75.5% of our total salaries district-wide are paid to teachers and educational assistants that go directly into the classroom and or the student. Just under 6% is custodial and maintenance staff, 3.5% is central office and tech staff, 3.8% in food service, 6.5% in building directors and principals, and just under 5% in transportation staff. It's a snapshot of where our total salaries end up. Next is a slide on just the general fund revenues, where the money comes from. Local taxes are 33%. Other local sources are 2.6%, for a total of basically local sources of just under 36%. State sources are just over 59%, and federal sources are 1.2%, which there's about $150,000 of our general fund federal dollars that are frozen right now, which is in relative, I mean, it's 150,000, but in relative terms, it's a very small number considering what some of these other districts are facing. So this is a time where it's good that we're not relying on federal incomes. The general fund expenditures of $42,948,000. 62% is instructional, 34% is support services, and co-curricular is just under 3%. The general fund expenditures by object level. It's a slide that I pay a lot of attention to. The object is the actual expense, salary and benefits is the biggest consumer of our general fund dollars. It's 85.6%. Next in line, we have supplies and materials at 4%, other purchase services at 5%. What would comprise other purchase services is, in this day and age, there is a ton of software contracts in the district. That's the majority of that 5%. And then utilities comprise 4% of our total general fund budget. The other $426,700 is basically property and liability insurance. Feel free to chime in with any questions you have along the way or whenever. The next slide is a capital outlay budget for 25-26. The $10,265,000 is all local, basically all local revenue. There's a little bit of Perkins grant in there. The expenditure side of things, facility improvements, just under 1.3 million. Transportations, buses and Suburbans, 536,000. Instructional programs, 2,565,000. 95% of that is computers. Debt service in the capital outlay fund this year is $2,351,000, and our operating transfer out is 1.4 million. You can see the percentages in the charts, but those half a dozen items that I just designated there comprise 92% of the total expenditures in the capital outlay fund. Special education fund for next year has revenues of $11,307,000, expenditures of $11,152,000. As you know, we had a lot of conversations about special ed throughout the year. Jared put together a task force to try to control where we were headed in that fund, and I truly believe that the bleeding was stopped temporarily. I mean, it's at least there's a Band-Aid over it. We got some things under control in the current year budget and in this next year budget, but it continues to be very delicate, people. I mean, a sway of just a little bit one way or another when you have an 8% fund balance, it goes quickly. So it's still very delicate, I would say, but going in the right direction. The bleeding stopped, and we just need to be cognizant of all of our financial decisions in that fund. They could have a great effect on us. Next slide is a good slide. It summarizes the year end for this year, 24-25. General fund budget versus actual or projected. I guess I don't know all the actual expenditures and revenues, but projected to have $42.1 million in revenues and $40,500,000 in expenditures, which gives us a surplus from 24-25 of $1.6 million. Now, on the revenue side, you can see we're at 102.8%. That's $1.2 million over budget. Where that came from is we had $400,000 of additional kids that above our projection, $600,000 of bank franchise. I talk about it ad nauseum, I know, but we got to be cognizant of it. And then there's about $200,000 of other stuff. And then on our expenditure level, came in at 99%. 1% under is $400,000+, amounted to $1.6 million. The bank franchise tax will affect not 25-26, but 26-27 budget, and then in the fact that that's when it will come into play. So you'll be utilizing some fund balance that you've stuck into the fund this year to balance that budget. And coming up in 26-27, you'll have about $400,000+ of operational costs for those new buildings. So you will be utilizing some of your fund balance to make all that work. It's currently at 22% at $8,875,000. Capital outlay fund revenues came in at 100%, expenditures at 98%, so there was an increase of $150,000 in our fund balance over what we projected. The ending fund balance at the end of 25 was $6,169,000. Remember, we're getting back into our regrouping of building up that fund balance for phase 2 of your building needs and wishes down the road. I think it's in 28, 29 that you'll be able to pay for those with cash, the phase 2 of that process. About $12 million in cash is what's projected to be spent in that situation. Also, I had in my notes here, capital outlay, remember, is greatly affected by Senate Bill 216. Our taxable valuations have been up, and that's a benefit to us, which it should be. If you're growing, that means new kids, new needs for facilities. It's not a good thing that with Senate Bill 216 for the Brandon Valley School District. It's probably what we in our office talk about, probably $300,000 a year, $250,000 to $300,000 a year that you are gonna not be receiving for 5 years. Five times 3 is 1.5 million that you will lose, and it will never be there. So you can't build on it too. So it has a compounding effect. Special Education Fund ended with $87,000 deficit as opposed to a budgeted deficit of $500,000. That's some of what I spoke about earlier about stopping the bleeding. We had a $100,000 SLP hiring that we deferred, a speech and language person, that we deferred that hiring. IDEA funds had some reallocation dollars, which is very unusual, so that was just luck, $100,000 there. And then we had about $200,000 that was way over budgeted at Teachwell. For some reason, that was way too strong of what the actual kids that we had at Teachwell. So that total of $400,000 makes up the difference between the 500 and $100,000 and the $87,000. Not only does my laser pointer not work, the whole thing doesn't work. Then the bond redemption fund, basically break even. 100% revenues and 100% expenditures. The last slide is the 25-26 highlights that I have. The top half of that is just the stuff that we've already gone over, the expenditures and the revenues. I'll start at the general fund highlights. The fund balance increased 1.6 million to 8.9 million, 22% of expenditures. Our revenues increased $1,887,000 for 25-26. $500,000 of this was our state aid funding increase. $400,000 was our projected enrollment increase of 55 kids. I lowered that from our preliminary budget. I had 90 in there from our preliminary budget, and now I've adjusted that to 55. It's way more conservative. We'll see what happens on that. And then other of 600,000, which is other, that's a large item, but a vast majority, 350,000 of that, guys, is investment income. I'm pulling down 4% plus on all of our investments, which we haven't had that in 10 years. I mean, it's been 0 point something. And this is rock solid. As you see on the investment reports, it's 4+%. So that line item is 350,000 next year.
When you say investments, what are you,
Or excess cash.
CDs? Just
Yeah,
with
CDs,
bank, or-
and we do some stuff with a company called South Dakota Fit. They invest public sector money, and they have a money market that's been close to 4%, which is as good as I can get in liquid cash.
Yeah.
And I think currently I have a $9 million just regular fund CD with First National. And then another $6 million, but that's project funds. Increase in expenditures of $2 million. Salary and benefits comprised half of that, about $1 million of that $2 million. Additional staff was $725,000, so that 1.7 million basically eats up that $2 million. Insurance and utility costs, $150,000. Early retirement costs were up $125,000, and supplies and materials were up $150,000. That comprises the $2 million. In the capital outlay fund, our taxable valuation is projected to go up 4.3 million, or is it projected to be 4.3 billion in total, which is a plus 300 million from last year, 7.5%. That's where that Senate Bill 216 comes into play. You won't, you get it all this year, but in future years, you'll be handcuffed. Debt service comprises 26% of our capital outlay fund this coming year, which is $2.3 million, which is a considerable increase from all past years. We issued the debt for the new elementary school and the new middle school, $30 million, $23 million for the elementary and $7 million for the addition at the middle school, total of $30 million at very good rates. We ended up doing pretty well on that, as we talked about earlier. Special ed fund balance decreased 87,000 to 865,000, which is 8% of our total expenditures. We talked about that earlier. 1.6% increase in expenditures from the previous year, so a slightly smaller increase than the general fund of 175,000. And then we had almost 8% increase in revenues. They rebased some of the disability categories. And bond redemption fund is basically the same. That's all I have for you. Any questions? You will later in the agenda have on your approval list to approve the budget for 25-26 and the affiliated tax askings.
No questions? Well, if any come up, feel free to reach out to Mr. Lundberg. And otherwise, once again, thank you very much for all you do.
See, it's just a riveting concern from the public sector, which speaks highly of you guys. I mean, when they're here, there's something up.
And to that, I don't think there's any surprises per se, because of, it's not, I mean, we're looking right now at current and next year, but the way that it's been planned by you and your team for 5 years in advance, how we continue to keep everyone updated as best that we can, pending legislation changes. That's why I believe there's not a huge public
helps.
concern, right? I mean.
It helps,
It,
yeah.
it does, definitely. So I don't know that there's many districts that are as well planned for 2 years, much less 5 years ahead. So thank you. That's a huge thank you, and supports our strategic plan.
And as I said at the beginning, you guys are providing the resources so our kids can be successful. That's the bottom line. That's your job, to provide the necessary resources so everybody can be successful. I thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll wait. Yeah, take a 5 or 6 minute break here before we start the other part of the meeting.